Dune Part 2 is the sequel to Dune Part 1 from 2021. This was once again directed by one of my favourite current filmmakers, Denis Villeneuve, who co-wrote the film along with John Spaihts, who also wrote the first film as well. This is based on the second half of Frank Herbert's first book from 1965. Now, before I dive into the review, I want to briefly discuss about my experience of the world of Dune. I have only read the first book about 4 years ago now, when I was waiting for part 1 to be released in cinemas, and I absolutely loved this book. It is one of the most interesting, strange, challenging and original sci-fi stories I have ever read. I have seen David Lynch's film from 1984, and in my opinion it is not that great. But for some, it has become a cult classic. But the problem with that film is it rushes through a lot of Herbert's first book, and in the end, it does not make that much sense, which is why I feel that Villeneuve did the right choice of making his version into 2 parts. I have also seen Jodorowsky's Dune, a documentary about the talented filmmaker Alejandro Jodorowsky, who wanted to make his own Dune film. Unfortunately, his vision did not get to come to life, as it was way ahead of its own time, and there were many other problems with the project as well. But you should definitely check this documentary out. It is pretty hilarious and insane of the amount of ideas that went into this project. Finally, Dune Part 1 from 2021. This was my most anticipated film of 2020, then 2021. But I loved Part 1. It showed from Villeneuve's filmmaking that it can be possible to be adapted from this huge and complicated world, with some fascinating ideas, a slow burn pace, and some of the most incredible world building I've ever seen. Now, let's talk about Dune Part 2. Paul Atreides unites with Chani and the Fremen while seeking revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. I found Dune Part 2 to be a brilliant and extremely satisfying sequel. It's a great example of why I love the weird and wonderful world of the sci-fi genre, and it was an experience that made me feel delighted of continuing to watch films on the big screen. Denis Villeneuve's continuation of directing Dune is once again full of atmosphere, suspense, and beauty. He has directed many other films, more of them recently being sci-fi, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and now the 2 Dune films. I honestly now feel, with the extremely satisfaction of what he's created in the sci-fi genre, I feel that Denis Villeneuve has become the greatest modern sci-fi filmmaker. Just like the first film, this also has a stellar cast with excellent performances. The returning cast would be Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Zendaya, Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Dave Bautista, Stellan Skarsgård, and Charlotte Rampling, with the new added cast being Florence Pugh, Léa Seydoux, Austin Butler, and Christopher Walken. Also, Anna Taylor-Joy is in Dune Part 2. I will not say who she plays as because that will be a spoiler, but this is a definite because she attended the world premiere in London and this was announced. The standouts for me would be Timothée Chalamet as Paul Atreides, who I find to be a better actor who plays characters to be sensitive and deep. Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica, whom I found to be one of the standouts from Dune Part 1, and I find it a bit annoying not that many people give her that much credit. But Ferguson smashes it, and for a character, she gets to have a bit of an upgrade for her powerful abilities. Austin Butler as Fade Rother crushed it, and he was at another level of being unhinged. Butler portrayed this version of the character to be so unpredictable, and he does not have a care in the world. He will kill anyone he wants, whenever he wants. Definitely as someone who I would not want to come across with, and I would prefer just to stay out of his way. The entire cast, as their characters, are given an amount and enough screen time, and for more importantly, for their motivations. In addition, characters who did not get much involvement in Dune Part 1, for example the Fremen themselves. I very much liked the chemistry between Paul and Chani. It comes across at first caring and then eventually difficult, for the conflict they both face, especially for Chani about the dark side of Paul being the prophecy that could affect her people and their future. Cinematographer Greg Fraser also shot the previous Dune film, in addition the Batman and the Creator. His cinematography in Dune Part 2 was gorgeous! I am confident he could get another nomination and even a win like he did a couple years ago for Dune Part 1. What Fraser captures from the monumental wides of the IMAX digital cameras is so impressive that it makes it to be a mind-blowing experience from a visual and technical level. Particularly, the eye-catching sand dunes, once again filmed in real locations like Jordan. I loved how one of the scenes is lit from low lighting for the use of a sunset to happen, and it was so appropriate for the tone they were going for. It especially works as one of the first scenes of the film to grab the audience back into the dangerous and beautiful world of Arrakis. Another part I liked from the cinematography was this creative choice on the planet where the Harkonnens are. There is this massive fighting arena that is captured only in black and white. This is actually when we meet Feyd-Rautha on his birthday, fighting to the death against Atreides soldiers they took as prisoners. But what I found captivating by this style choice, and from my interpretation, is it feels to be objective. To show a more in-depth look about the Harkonnens only seeing and caring about themselves and their motivation for power. It reminded me of what Christopher Nolan did in Oppenheimer for the scenes Robert Downey Jr. was in. I think as well for Feyd-Rautha is the core individual for this meaning of him actually wanting power. I might be wrong, but again, this is only my interpretation. I'm sure there'll be many others who have maybe something similar and maybe something different, but that is the beauty of art being subjective. Dune Part 2 has wicked costumes and extremely stunning production sets. And once again, Hans Zimmer's score is a blast to listen to. I also wanted to mention the fight choreography. It is much better than what Part 1 did, and I exceptionally liked the fight scene between Paul and Feyd. I appreciated that there was no music at all, and it was more about the brutal and realistic sound effects from each other, and it made the experience to be more nail-biting, nerve-wracking, and less overly dramatic. It is a well-paced film, but it is longer than Part 1. But to be honest with you, the experience flew by more for me and less of a slow burn than what Part 1 did. All of the action scenes were mind-blowing and intense. I especially liked the scene when Paul is running, jumping, and eventually riding a sandworm. This is one of the pros of watching a film like Dune on the big screen. I cannot forget to mention the stunning visual effects, especially with the many more ginormous sandworms we see. With the sound design, it is so experimental that it just felt satisfying to listen to. Regarding the story of Dune Part 2, which by the way I will be talking spoiler free, so I do apologise if I don't go into too much detail. I appreciated that this script goes into the more technology, religion and culture side from the Harkonnens, and essentially from the Fremen as well. I thought the development of Paul Atreides of proving himself to be the chosen one towards the Fremen was executed so well on levels of action, adventure and drama. Especially how this journey Paul Atreides is doing, based on Herbert's creation, is an anti-hero story and not someone like Luke Skywalker. His leadership and powers have the potential to defeat the enemy, with the Fremen following him. The outcome though could lead to dangerous and unstoppable consequences, making Paul Atreides to be this compelling and flawed character. With what I just said, I'm hoping that Dune Part 3 will happen. I'm confident it will, but in the meantime though, I better start reading the second book. I do think some viewers will feel overwhelmed by Dune Part 2's script of its new context from the world itself, but I felt curious and hooked to these ideas. But in the end, I loved Dune Part 2, and to be honest with you, I think I love it just as the same as the first film. That is probably because that both of these films are from one book. I know some people will have different thoughts on that, but that's just how I feel about it. I highly recommend Dune Part 2. Make sure you see Dune Part 1 first though. And if you want to see it on the biggest screen, just like I did, I would definitely check this one out on IMAX. I'm going to give Dune Part 2 5 stars out of 5. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please let me know your thoughts about the film in the comments below. I appreciate the support as always. Until next time.